Now, I wasn't a professional paid firefighter for any length of time, but I was a volunteer for a number of years locally, and I knew somewhat some of the information about controlled burns. So I thought I'd look into some of the videos that are circulating on the internet, and I come across many of the videos, and there's so many out there. And in a controlled burn, one of the biggest videos that you'll find is there's a highway and there's a fire on one side of the highway. Now, in a controlled burn, you would burn between the fire and the highway so you can stop it before it crosses over. But in this scenario, the fire's on one side of the highway and they're burning the opposite side of the highway, which it's counterintuitive. I mean, it doesn't work. You're spreading the fire by natural means. And then I've seen all kinds of other videos. One of them in particular that really made the rounds was in Quebec, where there was satellite imagery of about 10 or 15 fires igniting all at once,
Which
not
I've got
one,
that.
and then two, and then three. And
I've got
in,
the
we're
video, by the way.
talking, I'm sorry?
I've got that video, by the way.
Yeah, so they ignited simultaneously all at once, which again it just seemed one or two coincidental, perhaps. This is the one. But you could see them popping up like all at once. There's 10 or 15 of them. I think there's a little, it's okay to question this and to see what's going on. Then when you match this with some of the footage on the ground, or I should say just helicopters and so on, I questioned everything. So I put together this video just sort of on a whim and posted it, and it's reached, 1,600,000 people. It's been shared all over the place, and I'm not sure if I should have done that.
Well, and on that note, I had a lot. Oh my goodness, it wasn't just you. My Facebook feed, my Twitter feed, everywhere I go, everyone's like, "Oh, it's space lasers! They're lighting up the whole country on fire!" And it's like, well, okay, well, but back up.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's like back up for a second. Okay, first of all, understand that Canada, per season, every year, we experience upwards around 8,000 forest fires per year. So what I wanted to show you is, and show everybody as well, is because even though I'm not ruling out space lasers. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that this is completely explainable by natural means. Actually, you know what? Give me 1 second. I want to play that video again. So this was by...
Here's today. All of southeast Quebec just caught on fire, guys. All of it. Insane.
So, whoops, wrong button. So what I wanted to show, though, was that, so everybody understands, okay, so these fires, you probably can't... Can you guys see my mouse pointer on the screen? I don't know if you can or not.
I cannot.
Nope.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do... Anyway, you guys can see the fires. You can see the smoke streams. So the thing is, those fires could have been burning for a week. So in other words, it's a perfectly clear day. What you are seeing is winds picking up. So and I saw this up in Northwest Territories back in 2014. So John Webster, who's in the chats, and John was actually the one, I was texting him yesterday, just asking him to recount Northwest Territories in 2014, because we were working the Hay River rail yard with CN. He was the yard foreman, I was the conductor, the brakeman, and we had an engineer up there as well. And it was unbelievable what happened. So I'm going to show you.
Before you do, Ian, one other thing that one of my viewers pointed out, he had taken an overlap of the most dense fire regions and so on throughout of Canada, and then the most dense populated areas. Mm-hmm. And when he overlapped them, they were eerily similar. Where he pointed out also, if you look at northern Quebec, which was equally as dry and so on, and other places, why aren't fires popping out there? Why are they just popping up where, kind of the people live? And So people kind of put that to match them together with the WEF and their map to push people into cities and that whole sort of thing, those 15-minute cities. So it was kind of interesting.
Right. And it is. And bear in mind as well, like over in Alberta in particular, I've had friends who were evacuated from the fires over there, and it was encroaching upon the cities, even endangering the cities. And again, what I want to keep repeating is this is not the first time we've seen this. 2011, the Slave Lake, Alberta fire. It took out like 35% of the buildings in the whole town. And it was not a small town. It was bigger than Deep River. And I went through there. I had spoken in the church there. I was on tour at the time. I had spoken in the church there 1 or 2 years prior. And oh my goodness, I've forgotten his name. The pastor that was there. I even wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Yes, Sid Chalmers, who may even be watching right now. So Pastor Sid, I spoke there with my museum a couple of times, came back 1 or 2 years later after the fire. And I mean, the church was gone. All the buildings in that part of it was like the apocalypse. So it's not like we haven't seen this before. And it's also, so I will show you. So this is 2014. We're up. Can you see? Oh, you can see my mouse pointer now. Here's Hay River right there. So we were running the rail yard there, and so you understand the demographics here. This is the Mackenzie River here, which goes all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. So they run barges up there, right? So this feeds supplies to all the Canadian high Arctic, and they also have ice roads in the wintertime, so which also feeds it. So the vast majority of everything we brought in on the trains was tank cars of fuel. And so I was asking John about how many cars we had at the time, because the yard could fit 30 cars per track. We had 3 tracks, so probably 90 cars. Then we had this track across the road, which we also stuffed cars in. We're talking like, and then we had 18 cars down at Imperious Oil, and then another 6 cars at Cargo Flow. So we're talking, 130 rail cars of, I think it's 235,000 gallons each. We've got this field of rolling bombs, and we were literally surrounded by forest fires. And John was calling the train master up saying, do we have an evacuation plan? Like, what are we going to do if the fire comes into town? We've got this huge field of rolling bombs. What, are we just leaving them? Are we putting together a train in a real big hurry and hustling out of town? What are we doing? And the train master apparently just laughed and hung up on them. So, oh, anything else? Okay, no, you're on your own. Good luck with that. So I mean, you can imagine what would have happened, if the fire had come into town, right? So anyway, so this is a map. Now, unfortunately, I wanted to do what that guy did with the Quebec satellite imagery, but I couldn't because the satellite imagery only goes back to 2015. So what I was doing at the time, though, was I was screen capturing these maps because I was up there at the time, right? And so fortunately, I was screen capturing it and I posted it to Facebook. So that's the only reason I even have these images, okay? So get a load of this. Look at how many fires there was. So we're right here, and I mean, we are absolutely surrounded. So the one night they were calling for rain showers to come in, and we were all excited because it's like, yes, finally get some rain, maybe douse some of these fires. Well, the storms came through overnight, and there was essentially no rain, but a whole mess of lightning. And so, are you ready for this? This is what happened overnight. So look at all the number of fires, including right around Hay River, that all cropped up overnight. So, and this, by the way, this area is quite a bit bigger than the area that guy was showing in Quebec. I measured, it was about 500 kilometers, and this is actually about 700 kilometers wide here and about 500 kilometers high. So, I mean, This just gives you an idea of the number of fires that can crop up literally in hours. But the catch is, all these fires, most of them just sat there and smoldered. It wasn't a big deal. But they're sitting there, they're keeping an eye on them. The instant the wind picks up, that's when you get into trouble. And that's what I'm saying happened in Quebec. Those fires were already lit. They could have been lit days in advance, even a week or more in advance. And they're just sitting there. It's a tree gets struck by lightning, and the tree is just sitting there burning. And then these winds come in, and that's why all the fires lit up at once, is because you have this huge swath of wind, which now basically fans the flames of all these fires that were lit by lightning storms a couple days prior. So anyway, all I'm saying...
I'm very glad to hear that you're treating this as a normal occurrence, because I was one of them that fell for, oh, well, I ain't saying it was aliens, but it was space lasers. Right. I saw that going around. But just today, by a big stroke of providence, I'll say, is where I work downtown Roswell. I told you a little story on that. A woman from Canada was in today, and I was like, oh, wow, I bet you're really happy to, you picked the right time to get away. She just looked at me like, what, you mean those fires? I'm like, well, yeah. She goes, happens all the time.
Yep.
And I was like, really? She goes, yeah, the orange New York. That's what's weird to us. It's those pictures from New York that's getting all of our American attention. But there's meatpacking plants and there's other stuff happening all over the country. Train wrecks that I'm like, that's a lot to be a coincidence. But the Canadian wildfires don't fall into the conspiracy ploy, I guess, apparently, do they?
Well, they could.
They could. And I'm not...
They could.
I'm also not ruling it out. I want to be careful about that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll bring one up.
Okay.
And it's not that I haven't seen this one before, but my tinfoil hat's working. So, first of all, I did read CBS made a comment. They also brought up the idea that this happens all the time. It's due to weather, the heavy lightning, plus the winds pushing it. But they did have one little paragraph where they made a comment about there's also the potential a lot of these are coming from those nasty, what do you call them? Train conductors flicking their cigarettes, as they go across the country.
It's way more than that. Yep. I've lost count of how many fires my train started over the years.
From smokers?
Well, maybe even just sparks coming off the wheels as you're stopping and braking.
The
sparks are
coming
flying
off the wheels. In one case, I was taking a train back from Winnipeg to Sioux Lookout, and we derailed on a corner. So we're dragging a car 4.5 miles. We lit 3.5 miles of forest on fire because as the wheel is rolling along, rubbing on the rail, it's literally machining steel off the face of that wheel. And so these red hot shavings are coming off, and literally we lit 3.5 miles of forest on fire. I'm walking back after we got hit with the hotbox detector saying, dragging equipment. So I walk back and I come around the corner because the engineer's like, well, hey, take a walk back. See if you can figure out why we derailed, because we didn't know why, right? It's just we got a wheel in between the rails. And I walk back around the corner, and as far as the eye could see, it was like 3.5, 4 foot flames on the rail bed. And just as I'm walking up to it, here comes this water bomber right at me. And I'm like, ah! So I take a beeline for the bush, dumps this water load on this fire in front of me, which was a grease pit from the greasers on the wheels. And put most of it out. There was a couple little spot fires. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll go stamp those up and be done with it. And just as I walk over there, and the rails had kinked about 3 feet to the north. And I'm like, oh, well, this is why we derailed. Well, actually, it was just the heat from the fire, right? Expanding the rails and kinking them. But I didn't know that. So I'm up there, and here comes the water bomber again, beelining right at me. I'm like, ah! So I book it into the bushes. Why was I telling you that? I don't remember. Anyway, that was only one. The brakes, we put the brakes on the train. That generates heat on the brake shoes. The brake shoes wear out enough where they fall off or they cause sparks in the wheels. My brother did the volunteer fire department here in Ottawa Valley when the rail lines was still open here. The number one cause of fires was power lines. Second highest cause, the trains. So it's just all these derailments. Everyone was like, "Oh no, this is this is all deliberate." I'm like, actually, no.
It's the Russians.
No, let me finish my conspiracy one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Chinese. Okay.
No, it's the Canadian military. I believe this is possibly a military exercise to practice for the takeover of the northern part of the U.S. All that smoke you saw on New York,
Clearly.
that's full cover for the military to move in mass across that border and not be detected.
Keep complaining. We'll send you some more smoke.
So we're here to talk about alien invasion, and the best you got is Canada's going to invade?
This is true.
There's also arson, right? There are a number of people that have been charged with setting some fires across the country as well.
Oh, and thank you for bringing that up. I meant to mention that. So these fires, which I've still got in the map, I've still got this up. So of all these, I think there was 385 fires that season, and at least 13 of them were caused by humans. And the Slave Lake fire, for example, was determined to be arson. And at that time, when the Slave Lake fire happened, everyone was screaming, "Oh, global warming!" And then it came out it was arson, and nobody has ever been arrested. So we see all kinds of similarities here.